All right, welcome to, I think this is episode 6. I'm starting to lose track of Four Tires and Fuel podcast. I am your co-host, Steven Cherrick. I am the rear tire changer on the 38 truck with Front Row Motorsports and the rear tire changer on the 29 of Blaine Perkins for Ryan Sieg Racing, and we will get into that later.
I'm John McGee, front tire changer on the 41 Nice Motorsports truck and the 35 Joey Gates Motorsports Xfinity car. And yeah, we're back. We had a week off last week. I was out of town for most of the week last week, so that made lining up our schedules a little bit more difficult for last week. But we're back, and we're going to be having some interesting conversations this week for sure, and looking forward for the next couple of weeks. We'll have some interesting and really cool guests on, hopefully. So but just me and Steven this week, and yeah, I don't know, I think we'll still have a good episode.
Yeah, you're stuck with us, but we'll keep you guys entertained.
That's right.
So we'll jump right into it. We're gonna we're gonna rewind a little bit since we missed last week. We're gonna talk about Iowa. Yeah. Neither one of us have ever been there, so it was both of our first experiences there. And how'd it go for you, John?
Yeah, Iowa went well. Actually, we had our best Xfinity finish of the year. I'm not on the most competitive Xfinity car, but we had a good finish. We were 16th, I think. Just outside of the top 15, which we were really gunning for. But our driver, Joey Gates, he's originally from Iowa, so he, put his best equipment into Iowa, got a brand new chassis, had good sponsorship allowing us to put some, really good equipment into the car. And honestly, the setup was pretty good. He was complaining that about the handling, in the first couple of stages. We did a small adjustment in the track bar, and that was really it. We did, I think, two rounds total of track bar throughout the race, and yeah, generally it was a solid race because of kind of how long it was. Honestly, it was only 100 laps shorter than the Cup race, so we did 4 stops, all 4 tire stops. So it's a pretty busy day. But yeah, I mean, I think we ran our best race. We had to start from the very back because qualifying got rained out. But after that, we really moved up the field and gained several spots on pit stops each time. And yeah, I mean, overall, I thought it was good. Good weekend. I ended up doing the ARCA race as well the night before on Friday night, and we were running. I was on the Rev Racing car, the 6 with LeVar Scott, and we were running top 5 all night. And right at the end of the race, with 10 laps left, we ended up spinning out and had to come in and put some scuffed tires on, and ended up finishing in either 7th place or 9th place, somewhere around there. But we were really competitive all night, and would have been cool to finish within the top 5 and maybe even a top 3. But yeah, overall, I mean, it was a really good weekend for Xfinity. We were right near the start finish line and pit road, and then for the ARCA race, we were the last stall in the straightaway before it started to bend going into turn 1. But overall, I mean, pit road was really solid. The boxes were really big. I thought I measured them; they're 20 feet wide and fairly long, especially for a short track. So yeah, I had no problems with pit road. I thought it was actually really good. So.
Yeah, I mean, when I got there and I actually saw the size of the pit stalls, I was like, these pit stalls are actually massive.
Yeah,
compared to the general pit stall size. So that helped me a lot because you got plenty of room to maneuver around the pit stall without interfering with anybody else or anybody else interfering with you?
Yeah, I was a little interested to see how they would be because IndyCar runs their 2 races a year, and they basically had been the only really NASCAR Cup Series hadn't been there, and the Xfinity Series hadn't been there for several years. So the only other track where they run IndyCar is Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and those boxes are like super long but really really narrow because those Indy cars are more narrow than than NASCAR. So I was a little worried that they might be similar to that, but they ended up being honestly some of the widest boxes of the year. Overall pit road was really, I thought was really good, especially for a track that was under a mile in length.
Yeah. So definitely an advantage on our end. But what wasn't the advantage was the amount of tire problems that everybody had.
Yeah.
Were you guys did you guys have any issues with excessive tire wear, tire chunking, anything like that?
We had some that were pretty tore up, like coming off the car, they were all looked in pretty bad shape. But I don't think we had any terrible issues with tire wear that I can remember. I know they were all pretty used up for sure after each of the runs, but nothing that was crazy. So
yeah. I mean, for us, we I think we qualified. Like I watched practice, and we were like 4th in practice for a while, and then everybody started doing mock qualifying runs, and we ended up 7th, and I was like, oh, it's gonna be that kind of weekend.
Yeah.
And then qualifying got rained out, and we started 23rd. So I was like, all right, we got some work to do. But kind of the same thing. He was complaining a little bit. Not really complaining. They were kind of talking about being way too loose to start the run. But then honestly, when he got 15, 20 laps into the run, he was the fastest car on the racetrack. And
Wow.
I was shocked.
Yeah. Wow.
Because it was building tight over the course of the race and the runs and everything. So they didn't want to free it up or tighten it up or anything to make it to help it on the short run, because they knew they had such a good long run car. So most of the day it was just 4 tires straight up, and he drove it up to the top 10, and we pretty much stayed there the whole time. And then I think the 3rd stage he got we pit at the end of the 2nd stage, put tires on, and then probably a good 20, 25, maybe 30 laps in, he came on the radio and said he had a vibration. And we were like, oh God. So we got up on the wall and changed tires. And what happened was both rear tires, the left rear and the right rear, both shifted on the rim. Like the tire itself moved on the rim.
Wow.
And I've never seen, I've seen it happen where one tire moves a 1/4 of an inch, maybe 1/2 an inch, but each tire moved an inch and a half. It was insane, and it completely threw the balance of the wheel off, and he thought the tire was coming off the car. So we pit, we noticed it, and we kind of we told him about it, but there's not really anything he could do to fix it. So he kind of he pretty much, we pit, and then 10 laps later, maybe not even, the caution came out. We got trapped 2 laps down. So we took the wave around, got one back, and then fought for the lucky dog, got the lucky dog, and then came in and pit and put on 10 lap scuffs or something like that. And he was like, all right, you got 25 lap fresher tires than everybody else. And he went from, I think it was 17th to 7th on the green and white checkered. Wow. So we ended up with a 7th place finish. Wow. So that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's crazy. Was that a mounting issue that Goodyear had, or what was that?
I don't know. I didn't talk to them about it at Nashville because I forgot. But But yeah, like the way that you can see that is when the tire guys get the wheels, they mark out on the wheel itself, like the rubber part, where the wheel weights are located, like where it starts, where it stops, and how long it is. So basically, we looked at the pink marks that they had on the tire itself, and you could see that they were shifted from the actual like where the wheel weight was mounted on the wheel. So that was something different. I've never had one that bad, so I don't know if that was a rim problem or a mounting problem or what.
Yeah.
But it was wild.
Wow. Yeah, I heard definitely about some tire issues across pit road, but we were lucky we didn't have very many tire wear issues. Honestly, Joey Gase has probably ran more laps around Iowa Speedway than anybody on the field, and so I'm sure he was able to manage his tires better than a lot of guys, and so that was definitely a big advantage for us, and having somebody so experienced in the driver's seat there, especially when like we had never been there before. Well, we have been there, but it's been 3 or 4 years, and there hasn't been that many guys who have turned laps there or that many laps. They run there in ARCA, but anyways, long story short, Joey was definitely more experienced there than a lot of the field, and that was definitely a big advantage for us. So yeah, I mean, I thought we had a really good weekend in Iowa, and yeah, so it was overall, I would say it was our best weekend we've had in Xfinity for sure. So
Yeah, and it's definitely awesome to see like the smaller teams like the Joey Gase and the JDs and the Ryan Siegs like getting up there and duking it out with these bigger teams. And one of the things I heard was that like the bigger teams are more aggressive with like your cambers and your toe settings and like stuff in the suspension. And I think that's what was causing a lot of the tires to blow out because a lot of them were right fronts
yeah,
and right rears. Like it was partially a Goodyear problem, but it was also partially like a team problem for
right,
being so aggressive with those things because they could be in the past.
yeah,
And, those smaller teams don't want to push the limits on stuff like that. And for a track like that with a tire compound like that, it was definitely an advantage because I know we were running really good. You guys ran really good. I think the DGM cars were
yeah,
up there all race long.
yeah, yeah,
Um, the smaller teams were able to fight with the bigger teams because of not pushing the issue with stressing the tires out as much as they were.
yeah. I think Iowa was also. I mean, it was created by Rusty Wallace, like ex NASCAR driver for a long time, and the things I've heard about Iowa is that it's just a driver's track. It definitely favors having a talented driver, whereas in a lot of other tracks that you can, have, if you have a mechanical advantage, then, it's less on the driver than it is on the car. I mean, obviously the driver is still a huge part, but Iowa in particular, just the way that the track is and the different grooves and, the way you enter and exit the corners, like having a really good driver and maybe a car that is not as mechanically advantaged as some of the top teams, you can still have a huge impact and have a really good race. So I think that was true when we saw a lot of those smaller teams running and beating some of the bigger teams that maybe didn't have as good or as experienced of a driver in their car. Even though it might have been faster on paper. I think a lot of it was up to the driver this weekend, which was really cool. So, or I guess this past 2 weekends in Iowa. So, yeah. So that, anyways, but yeah, I would say that Iowa, like for us, we were really happy going out of it. We'd had some bad luck and not qualifying for races, and after Iowa, I think everybody left on a happy note, and we're like, yeah, hopefully we can use that momentum and move forward in the season. So we got some new crew members on the mechanic side of it, and I think that's been a help for the team, and get moving in the right direction. So
Yeah, I mean, I know everybody was kind of complaining a little bit about the maybe not more than a little bit, but about the partial repave and how it looked really bad and it didn't, like the top groove was like 100 yards longer on the exit of the turns than the bottom groove was, and like I think that had a little bit of a factor. But I kind of feel like what you were saying is like guys that have raced there and put a lot of laps in at that track is what benefited a lot of guys
yeah,
greatly.
no, I agree. I definitely agree. I mean, it was kind of the same way with Chicago last year. Like everybody was on a fresh slate, like, yeah, you could have a better car. In theory, you could have a better engine, you could have better aerodynamics, but like, all the drivers were on a fresh slate. The teams really didn't have any data on anything. So I think it's cool to be going to these tracks, that are brand new. Like same thing at North Wilkesboro. It's like, who knows what's going to happen, after you run somewhere for 20, 30, 50 years, like the teams have it pretty well figured out. And that's where the big teams can use their like wealth of knowledge and resources to just like have everything dialed in. But at these new tracks, ones that we haven't ran for a while, I think it really is cool for everybody to be more or less on, I don't want to say an even playing field, but the gap is definitely a little bit smaller in my opinion, because everybody's still trying to figure it out. At least for the first couple of years, and then the big teams always end up pulling away, it feels like. But
Yeah, I mean it's kind of refreshing sometimes when you go to a place like that, like Chicago Street Course or Iowa, that you haven't gone to in a long time. Like it is like a fresh slate where nobody knows what to expect, but you still have to try to set the car up to the best of your knowledge. So it's like, you try to just do the best you can and run the best you can, but sometimes it just
yeah,
comes down to driver ability when
for
it comes
sure.
to things like that.
Yeah, and I like those tracks where it's driver. Darlington comes to mind for sure. Uh, you know, yeah, Darlington's such an interesting track, and it's like if you have a great driver, you can get away with a lot of. Of course, the cars would be good, and if you have a last place car, and you're obviously you can't expect to win, but even if you do have the best driver, but like I like the tracks where the driver makes the difference,
Yeah.
and that's cool. So, well, moving forward here from Iowa, we'll have a couple different stories to tell from last weekend. I was up in Watkins Glen, racing in the IMSA series for the Lamborghini Super Trofeos. That's the second time this year I've done that. Third IMSA race of the season for me, but second with the Lamborghini Super Trofeos. And Steven was up in Loudon, New Hampshire, doing the Xfinity race up there. So yeah, how Steven, we'll get started on New Hampshire for you. How did things end up going this weekend?
They started on the wets, so
Yeah.
They were talking on the radio. Well, okay, let me roll it back. It was raining. It wasn't even raining. We got there at the track and it looked like it rained. It actually started where the modified race was supposed to be at after the Xfinity race, and they moved it up because of the chance of rain before the Xfinity race. So they ran it at 10 a.m. and then afterwards, it was like real hazy, foggy, but it was like or muggy. It wasn't even foggy. It was just muggy, and there was still a chance of rain. So they were postponing everything with the potential of rain, and then it kind of rained a little bit and then it stopped and then they dried the track, and then they were like, okay, Cup is going to have a half-hour practice session, an hour before the Xfinity race.
Wow.
And none of the teams could set their boxes up on pit road. So everybody was like scrambling to try and do everything.
Yeah.
And then they only ended up running I think 17 minutes of this practice session. And then it rained. It was raining too hard for them to be out there. So they canceled the rest of practice. And then teams had whatever time was left between the 17-minute practice session and 3 o'clock to get everything set up, ready to go. We're racing.
Damn.
So it was a scramble. I think we had 45 minutes to set up the box, get the guns, make sure we had all our tires down in the pit stall, and be ready to race.
Wow.
Awful situation. So they rushed everything, got the race started, and then they went out, did one pace lap, brought the cars back down, and said, we're going to start the race on wet tires. So we switched to wet tires, and they were talking on the radio, Matt and Kevin, about, we think the car's going to get tight because that's what happened in the truck race last year at Martinsville. So they kind of didn't know what they wanted to do. And so they tightened it up a little bit, but loosened it up a little bit, but it got really tight to the point where we were 10th to start the race, and we fell all the way to last.
Really?
And we're 2 seconds in front of getting lapped before in 10 laps. There was 10 laps, and then a competition caution came out. And in 9 laps, we went to last, 2 seconds ahead of Cole Custer, who was leading.
Wow.
So we came down, put the slicks back on, and sent the cars back out there on slicks. And then we quickly moved back up through the field to right around 15th to 20th, the whole race. We were kind of flirting with the top 10 a little bit, but we had probably about a 15th to 20th place car. And, we did our pit stops. We put a Packer in the right front on the second pit stop. We were going up and down with the rounds. I think at one point we did 4 rounds of something and went through the whole race. And then our last pit stop was the green flag one in the middle of stage 3. And we shipped it all the way to the end, had a whole bunch of late race cautions, and walked away with a 17th place finish. So everybody was happy. And then when I got on the plane, I got the notification that we were disqualified. So, per the NASCAR rulebook, 1 lug nut not touching the back of the wheel is a $5,000 fine for the crew chief and the team. 2 lug nuts not touching the back of the wheel is a suspension for the crew chief. And 3 lug nuts not touching the rim is a disqualification. I had 4, and it was my tire, and it was not fun. I don't know how I had 4. I watched the film. I shouldn't have had 4 lug nuts loose. But from what I heard was the right rear had 4 lug nuts missing. Not missing. They were on there, just not touching the rim. So it was a disqualification. I don't know. It's tough when you're put in this little box where you have guns supplied by a third-party company. You're getting tires in the middle of the race. All that stuff plays a factor. I have to go out there and do my job. I have to make sure the wheel's tight. In the end, it falls on me. And I apologize to the team. And I screwed up. And they've taken us off the 38 and moved us over to the 29 for Blaine Perkins. And so starting this weekend at Nashville, I'll be on the 29. And hopefully they can bounce back from the 38 guys can bounce back from that and knock out a good finish at Nashville. But that's how my weekend went.
Yeah.
How did you do at Watkins Glen?
Yeah, man. I mean, things were, an IMSA weekend is really different than NASCAR. So for IMSA, first of all, I'll say for NASCAR, for us pit crew guys, like if you're flying on a chartered plane and it's just a single race, let's say either a truck or Xfinity race, you're flying the morning of the race. You're getting there about 4 hours before. You're getting to the track about 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours before the race. You're doing the race, and then as soon as it's over, you're getting on the same plane and flying back home. And so there's a lot more race weekends, but the time that you actually spend at the track for pit crew guys is like a way less time. Where in IMSA, like last year, Stephen, we did a few races, and we had a really lucky situation where we were with a team where they had everything already set up and it was ready to roll. And we just flew in the day after our NASCAR race on Sunday, and we, just pitted the race. But that was a rare situation for IMSA. And so we ended up being at the track. It was a Saturday race. We ended up being at the track, getting there. My flight out of Charlotte was at 6 a.m. on Wednesday morning. So I got to the track. We flew into Syracuse, New York around 11, got to the track at like 2, and then worked all day setting things up. And in NASCAR, you just have like a pit box and a few things that you need to set up. Most teams, it takes like less than an hour. But for IMSA, we had 3 full tiled floors that we had to put down. We had 3 huge canopies. We had all of this infrastructure and stuff, and it took probably 5 to 6 hours to set up. And so we set all that up. Stephen, if you remember the last race at Road America that we did last year, it was like the same tile floor, the same canopy. We only had 2 of those for our team, or maybe even 1, but here we had 3 of them. So it was crazy. So we did that on Wednesday. We got to the track at 2. We probably left around 10, go back to the hotel, catch some sleep, back up in the morning at up to the track at 7. So I was a tire guy there. So I had to deal with making sure all the tires were mounted, labeled correctly, filled up to the right tire pressures with nitrogen, get them sorted out, get them to the teams. So we had 7 cars. So we had 5 in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo and then 2 in the Ford Mustang Challenge. And there were 2 different tire manufacturers. Mustangs were with Michelin. The Lambos were with Hankook. So we had to make 2 different trips everywhere, getting all these tires set up. And just on the slicks, there's 2 practice sessions, qualifying, and 2 races. So each car had 5 sets of slick tires over the weekend, and then there was a chance of rain. So each team had to have a set of rain tires there. So that was over 40 sets of tires that we did over the 4 days that we were there. And it ended up being really, really long days, working almost 60 hours total over the 4 days. I think one day was a 16-hour day. And it ended up being a lot. I actually kind of got a little sick because of how much I was working and not getting a lot of sleep. And I still have a little congestion. I feel fine, but so it was just a long, long weekend. And unfortunately, our performance on the track wasn't great. We had some bad luck in the Mustang Challenge. The first race ran almost completely under caution, so really no chances to pass because of some big wrecks. The second Mustang Challenge race, we had a flat tire on the outlap, and so we were behind the 8 ball to begin with. And then in the Lamborghini races, out of the 5 cars, we had 1 win in a class, which was good. Everybody was happy about that. Then we had a 2nd place finish and I believe a 3rd place finish as well. And so in IMSA, there's multiple classes, types of multi-class cars that run at the same time. So there's hypercars, which are GTP cars, and there's GTD cars and LMP2s. They all run together in the WeatherTech series. But in Lamborghini Super Trofeo, they're all the same cars, but just different classes of drivers. So there's a pro, Pro-Am, Amateur, and LB Cup. So there's 4 different classes of drivers in the same race. So we won our class in the amateur series, and then we ended up a second later on with that same driver, and then also another podium with another car. So honestly, we were hoping for more, but still getting a win and whatever was a good performance for the team. And then we ended up, heading back to Charlotte on Sunday afternoon and rested a whole bunch because it was a long weekend. So, but looking ready to get forward to Nashville here. We'll both be doing the truck and Xfinity race. The truck race is tomorrow over in Nashville. Steven, what all do you remember about Nashville from the last couple of years that we've been there?
It's fast. It's it's like a mile and a half ish, and it's pretty fast track. The groove doesn't widen out too much. But I know that pit stall wise, very standard pit boxes. It's all on the straightaway. There's no curves to them.
Yeah.
I want to say they're decent in size. That they're pretty wide. They're pretty long. No issues there.
Yeah, I don't.
I had
issues or anything noteworthy really on pit road.
Yeah, not really. There's always we always talk about nothing, like everything's standard on pit road, but there's always that chance. There's no wall separating the track from pit road like there is at like a Dover or I think Iowa had that where they had the wall. There's none of that. So there's always the chance that a car could spin out and come down pit road.
Yeah.
Which is very dangerous. But we know that chance, but it doesn't really happen that often.
Yeah.
So that there is that, but this one's not really that bad of a pit road to pit on. I don't mind it.
No. The only thing that really is going to concern me this week is the truck race should be fine because it's a night race, but for the following afternoon in the Xfinity race, it's supposed to be like a high of 95. So I'm concerned about the temperature and just being hydrated and ready to go and everything like that, especially when you're wearing a full layer of fireproof clothing under and then a full fire suit and a helmet and a head sock. Like it gets really, really hot. I mean, 95 is hot regardless of what you're wearing, but when you put all that stuff on extra, it really does get hot. I feel like Nashville is always hot. It's been hot the last 2 years we've went there. But the thing about it is that all these races coming up here in the next 2 months are going to be really, really hot. So we're starting to get to that point in the season where, the weather plays a real big factor, and you'll start to see people suffer from the effects of it, and it can be really dangerous for sure. I've known of a few guys who had to go into the infield care center because of dehydration or heat stroke or not. And honestly, with some people, you can prepare as best as you can, and it'll still catch you out. So, I'm hoping with it being a night race tomorrow, I think that'll help. But
I think it's still supposed to be like 90 degrees, even at like 8 o'clock at night when the race starts.
Yeah, it'll be a lot, man. I mean, I was up in upstate New York this last week, and it was 87 to 90 all week long. It's hot everywhere. So it's not gonna go away anytime soon, and so that's part of it. You got to deal with the effects and the weather, and so that's the main thing I'm really concerned about, because Nashville is pit road for the most part is pretty standard. Pit strategy will be pretty standard. 3 stops, I think, 4 tires each stop, and just dealing with the effects of the weather and going back-to-back races for sure. Got to make sure you're in you're in good shape, so you can be at your best for both races.
Yeah, I mean, I was always told in the beginning of my career that like you want to start preparing for a race when you know it's going to be hot. You want to start preparing like the Monday before the race to make sure that you're fully hydrated by the time you get to the track. And I was always like, I don't know if that's true or not. And then I went to Atlanta in 2019 or 2020 and I felt it. I was about to fall out the whole race. I think it was like 105 degrees. And I was like, I am hydrating the correct way
Yeah.
from this point on. So I've always been big on keeping myself hydrated, especially this year. I've been doing a much better job of it. So I always tell everybody to start preparing like a week in advance when you know it's going to be a really hot race to make sure that you don't have those issues. You don't get cramps. You don't, have, the heat stroke and everything like that to make sure that you can perform at your best, because that's part of it also is like you have to battle the elements of it being so hot and you being so dehydrated and hot when you're there doing it, and still being able to perform at a peak potential towards the end of the race.
No, I agree 100%, and it's like, right. So it's like, in the NFL or other sports, it's like, yeah, if you get injured, there's a backup that's going to be able right there to take your place or whatever. In NASCAR, it's not like that. If you fall out because of, heat related, or, you're dehydrated or just an injury, like a lot of times there's nobody there to fill in for you. So it can be a really big effect on your team if you have are not able to do the stops, So yeah, I mean, that's something I always try and, be mindful of, is just being ready and being prepared, because I know it's going to be there. Just got to plan on all the races from now on are going to be hot, and the better you prepare for it, the more prepared you're going to be when it comes race time, and the better your team is going to be, because you're going to be, and you're going to be ready to go. I know there's going to be a lot of guys who are struggling with that, and even if you're there, you might not be at your peak because you're cramping up, you're mentally not there because you're overheating and stuff like that. So if you can deal with the elements and be prepared, like, you're going to have an advantage over guys who might not have taken the same steps,
Yeah, and I know sometimes it can be tough too. I mean, like right this weekend, we don't have to go through a time change. We stay on the Eastern time. But like next week when we go to Chicago, like we got to go to Central time. So there's a time zone change. Plus we got to battle whatever elements we have. I mean, last year it rained like hell, but hopefully it doesn't do that this year. And so like, if it's going to be hot there, you need to be able to deal with your body going with time change along with being hydrated and being able to perform. Like it does take a lot of toll on your body for doing what we do. And you just need to put yourself in the best situation and prepare the best that you can to be able to, do this at the best of your ability.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And the thing is too, it's like you don't really have a break, like you do one race and then you have 3 or 4 days where you're at home or whatever, but then you're traveling again. It's like, you got to quickly recover and be starting to prepare for the next one as soon as you get back from the last one. It's kind of always a constant cycle of, all right, maybe it took a lot out of me doing a double header weekend, and all right, on Sunday I'm going to rest, and then on Monday, I still got to do my normal weekly stuff, working a job, whatever practices, but I got to, on top of that, like, be mindful to get good sleep, to eat right, to like stay hydrated throughout the week, because if not, it ends up compounding. If, okay, say you only recovered 60% or 70% from Nashville, and you don't get back up to 100% at Chicago, you're going to be running the race at 80, 90%. And that's how injuries happen. That's how dehydration and stuff happens. And, you know, before long, you're going to be in a really bad spot when the races start, you know, piling up one on top of the other. So,
yeah. And that's the thing too, is like we talk about like this week we're at Nashville and it's supposed to be 95, 100 degrees out while we're doing this. Then we got to go to Chicago. And I remember from Chicago last year, I think in total, we walked just before the race even started. We had to walk like 6 miles from going back and forth between the haulers and pit road because that's how far away everything was. Granted, it wasn't hot last year because of all the rain, but then you throw in it not raining and still being hot. Like now you got to do all of that before the race even starts. So you're dehydrated before the race even gets going.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. And Chicago was really hot until it rained. Like, you know, it was definitely, even you think about going up, like the Midwest is super humid this time of year and super hot. You know, we're going to go up to Indy and Michigan and Chicago, and I guarantee you, if you think it's not going to be hot, you're going to be sorely mistaken. You know, it's everywhere in the next 2 months is going to be really bad. So, yeah, just preparing for it, and that's really what I'm looking for Nashville, is just being on top of my game and hopefully having an advantage over the people who don't, and being able to do good pit stops because of that. So.
Yeah, that's really what I just it's one of those things where you just kind of have to focus on where you're at and just take care of yourself so that way you know that you're going to perform.
Right.
And not really worry about everybody else and what you think they're going to do.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So
what pit stall are you in for Nashville?
Let me check. I saw it the other day, actually. I think for the trucks, we're gonna be in.
Looks like 27.
Yeah, we're gonna be in. I think we have the O2 behind us, and
Clint Boyer.
Yeah,
right next to you, pit stall 28.
Yeah, so we're gonna be. You know, we have somebody behind us and in front of us, so we're gonna be. You know, not like we have a great pit stall selection where we have an opening in or opening out. We're going to be crammed up in there pretty good. So,
yeah, we're pit stall 40, so we're second pit stall in on pit road.
Yeah,
so we got to stay. That's one of the things too. You got to stay ready at all times for where we're at.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, because I mean it's like a 20-second, you know, drive down pit road. But if you're the first car there, like, or first couple stalls, like,
comes up quick.
You don't have that luxury. Yeah, that's for sure. So, yeah, man. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Also looking forward for the next couple of weeks, guys. I think we're going to have some really interesting guests. Some people that we're going to learn just as much as you guys are about some stuff. So stay tuned for that. I think they're going to be really interesting episodes. And yeah, I don't know, Steven, what do you have to, what do you think coming up here?
I mean, I'm excited for the people that we have coming on. We have people coming from not just NASCAR, but other motorsports as well.
Yep.
So you're going to want to tune in for those to see, to just listen to the differences between our style and their style and what we go through and what they go through. Yep. And just, you know, just enjoying the show and enjoying learning about what we go through on a weekly basis. I mean, that's pretty much it.
And they've had some success over the last couple of weeks for sure. So we'll have to ask them about how all that went. Yeah, we're really excited for it. So tune in the next week. We'll get back to our normal schedule of uploading once a week on Thursdays or Fridays. So stay tuned. We're gonna have some really interesting shows for you. We're gonna cover Chicago Speedway, Chicago Street Course coming up next week, as well as some other stuff too. So I know me and Steven are both really excited for it, and hope you guys are too. So looking forward to it. And like I said, if you have any questions, we'd love to answer them. So feel free to comment under the videos and or reach out to us. And we'd love to answer whatever questions you guys have during the show.
Yeah, I want to just thank everybody for the patience of, us not recording last week and us recording this week and trying to fill 3 races worth of information into, or technically 4 with Johnny going to Watkins Glen.
Yeah.
4 races worth of information into 1 episode. I know it's a lot, and but we appreciate it, and hopefully you guys stick with us and are here for the long haul.
That's right, because we're here. We'll be here. Yeah. All right, Steven. Well, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, man, and we'll talk again soon. We'll be together on the podcast here next week.
All right, man. I will see you tomorrow, and to all you guys out there, till next time, you guys be good.